All right, so if you see the somebody needs to be admitted, holler at me to try to multitask there. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Woo! Our first Faculty Academy of the fall semester. I'm Karen Yescavage. I am the Faculty Fellows Director, so I am so excited to be able to launch our first Academy of the fall season. We have one a month. This one is our first one, obviously, of the semester. And as you can see, we have what we're going to do today is kind of plant seeds of discussions for upcoming presentations, in addition to just, you know, have a chance to dialogue with each other, do some good discussing. But our next Faculty Academy will be October 6th, and they'll all be on Thursdays, except for this one. From 4 to 5, and they will all be next door in the Lark 108 room. So we have movable chairs and tables in there. Hooray for that. And for our Zoom folks, there is no right next door, of course, but we'll be thrilled to have you back with us. So like I said, we have one Faculty Academy a month. We'll have a couple of different topics. The first one, our Zimmerman dynamic duo, Carla and Rachel Zimmerman, will be sharing with us about best pedagogical practices in assessment, looking at some innovative grading strategies. And so that will certainly be one of our small group discussions for today. In November, Michael Briscoe and Rufina Butler will be partnering up to talk about promoting learner integrity. Also then looking at how do we help create assignments that reduce plagiarism, right? And to wrap us up with the fall semester and prepare us for the spring semester in December, we have Priscilla Brenes and Leanne Martinez, who are going to talk to us about, Leanne's going to talk about what's new in the Zoom classroom, and Priscilla's going to talk about how do we construct a syllabus that excites our students, that makes them eager to get started with the learning in the course. And so really, really excited to have our fellows offering these professional development opportunities. And in the spring, we'll have 4 more new and exciting topics. We're still in the plans of that. And I see David Volk over there getting some snacks. He will be one of our presenters in the spring. We're eagerly awaiting to see what topic he'll be sharing with you all. So I think that's the basics. So today we want to spend about 20 minutes breaking you into small groups to have a couple of different conversations, and we'll have our online folks be their own group, of course, and then we will look to share out to the whole after we have our small group discussions. I am excited to introduce 2 of my fellows and colleagues who are going to be facilitating today's event. And this is a part of the beginning of our skit, so I'm doing this deliberately. Yvonne, it's Martinez, Montoya, what is it? Mrs. Yvonne, could you come on up and introduce yourself? And Christine Rochester, can I just call you Chrissy? Can we just, okay. Well, can we keep it simple? It's just easier for me.
That's good, yeah.
All right, so anyway, Yvonne Montoya and Christine Rochester are going to also introduce themselves and tell us what our breakout sessions, our conversations will be about.
All right, thank you so much, Karen, and it's great to have her leading this event. And big thank you to Denise as well, because this wouldn't even be possible if it wasn't for their work and leadership. So we're all very excited to be here and happy that you came to join us, because without all of you in the engagement, it's just us talking to ourselves. So thank you for taking time in the late afternoon to make it here. We really appreciate you, and your insights will be very valuable. I'm Dr. Yvonne Montoya, not Martinez, but part of what we're talking about, right, is this idea that creating a positive classroom doesn't just start when you get to class, right? It starts before, when you start looking at your roster and you're trying to figure out the names of your students and looking at them and using things like Google Translate to come out with, how do I pronounce that name? Because some we just don't know. Or being willing to say, I don't know, could I do this? And then what practices are inclusive? Because sometimes we think, can I just call you, because it is easier for us if we could just call you both this easy. as opposed to what do I need to do to train my voice to be able to speak to people and say their names the way they want them to be pronounced, right? And so it's about doing things like that. My background, just a brief introduction, I'm an associate professor in communication and information design within the Department of English and World Languages. So I teach courses in speaking and listening. Probably many of your students will take my one of my courses, or a section. Rufina also teaches it as well. And intercultural communication, organizational communication, communicating with friends, things like that. But one of my big interests in terms of the faculty fellows is to really look at different types of pedagogy in terms of engaged experiential education. That's something that I'm very passionate about, working in the community and working with community organizations, and some of the things about how we go about doing some of those things and creating that. I know a few of us have been in the experiential ed game for a while, bringing things here, but that's a passion of mine. Also thinking about how can we make things inclusive for our students, and to really think about our population of students and how we might serve those students in the best ways possible. Something else is that we often hear best practices. So if you want to go through and do things for students, you have to be flexible. You have to have roving deadlines, you have to accept late work, you have to have them do it multiple times. And I also study work-life wellness as one of my research areas. And so sometimes the things that work best for students, or even for the university as an organization, really negatively affect faculty. And so there has to be some type of a balance within there to say, this isn't an organizational issue or an individual issue. This is an issue that we all have to look at from different perspectives, and not just make blanket policies or expectations based on one stakeholder group. Instead, it really has to include the group. And so that's something that I hope to bring to the table, and I'm very excited about.
Awesome. All right, so my correct name is Christine Rochester, and I'm a professor, and I'm in the School of Health Sciences and Human Movement. And I'm super excited to be part of the fellows, because it's just really exciting to come every meeting and talk to people that are along this, think along the same lines as how do we provide the best education for our students, and what is the craft of teaching. You know, I've always been a believer of the craft of teaching. It's not like we just deliver content, and there's so much to it. And to me, it's an art, and we meet with our students where they are, and we create these learning environments where they want to be. And we work to not have punitive classrooms, and we make a safe space for learning so that they're not scared. And I think that because of we're at CSU Pueblo, we have a lot of students that have a need for that kind of environment in order to learn. And I've always believed that in my teaching. So it's just great to work with others and learn from everybody. I mean, we're learning so much from each other, and we're making a lot of progress, I think. And so we're going to go ahead and get started with our work today. And we're going to need about 3 folks from the audience at each of our 3 stations. And our stations are going to be perfection versus practice. All right. And then we have the online people are at their own station. What's your station called, Denise? It's right there.
Success versus failure.
Success versus failure. And then we have another station back here called pros and cons of grading. And we're going to get kind of deeper into that grading conversation. And then over here is the one I'm doing. It's the validation and stereotypes. So please go ahead to your station, and then we're going to just come and get some comments and some discussion at our station, and then we'll come back and share that as a whole.
Yeah, so whichever of those topics calls to you, or there's nobody over there, I'm gonna go join that group because they could use somebody to discuss with.
So we'll
So
have 2 groups of 4 and 1 group of 3.
there you go.
Karen, were you able to set me as co-host?
I was gonna say, and then Denise is going to be our guru. Thank you, Denise. I should have said how instrumental you are in making the CTL function. Does it?
Okay, online friends. I will facilitate.
So I
Doing that.
setting up his area.
Is it allowing you to co-host?
Benches.
We're at the same
Yes.
level point. You've got to cover this.
No, I don't think the,
I am sorry, I did not think about that beforehand, my dear.
Next to participants.
I did.
Click on the participants. Link. There we go. Find me. Click over here with 3 dots and make co-host.
We're here.
I might need to be facilitator.
Yeah, we are.
Do you want me to? Or you can stop sharing the screen if you want. Are you good?
Or actually, what do you mean?
That is for this.
I'm trying to put the light, okay, I'm trying to put my lights. This one too? We're still trying to figure out.
Yeah, so we're looking. I tried to turn these ones on over here. That's good. That's good.
I don't know.
So. Social economic status.
You did. Can y'all hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
We'll just take notes on the bottom of this agenda sheet. That'll make things easy. Everyone should be able to annotate. And our prompt is right here. I'll copy it down here. Oh, I don't have editing access.
Denise, I
I'm
think
sorry,
she
just
said-
1 minute.
Denise, I think
I'll
ours
grab
is
document
success
for
and
us.
failure.
Right, so, you know.
What did you say, Calico? Ours is which one?
Success and failure. I'm sorry, my voice is bad. I'm pretty sure that's what she said.
I'm gonna go get that computer muted in the main room because it's making a lot of noise. Chris, can you please go mute that Zoom? Thank you. Hi.
How you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
Good.
Okay. It'll get quieter very quickly. I'm gonna give y'all a link in the chat. I'll set this to let's see. Okay. Chat on. Okay, well, I'm getting this set up. We can go ahead and start thinking about the prompt. Success versus failure. So what are some classroom practices? And it can be anything. It can be anything from grading to policy. Let's start thinking about what are some things that enable successful experiences for students in those areas. The Wi-Fi is just not working here. I'm so sorry.
It's okay, Denise. We can just have a discussion.
See if that likes me better. We're trying. Oh, I see lots of friends. I'm scrolling through the participant windows. Hi, y'all. Darn. There we go.
Yeah, so going off what the other people have put in the chat, I think that a lot of what helps students for success is just really listening to the students' needs. And, you know, I think that can be really important at the beginning of a class when you just talk about like student expectations, a lot of clarity in the instruction around what's going to happen in the class. But like everybody else has said, just some flexibility and a lot of timely feedback for students. And then I would add self-reflection. I think it's really, really valuable for students to do a lot of self-evaluation, self-reflection, as well as peer evaluation, so that they're not only getting feedback from the instructor, but they're also considering that from themselves. Like they're really looking at their own performance and their engagement. So that's something I've been using a lot recently, is a lot of self-reflection and a lot of peer reflection. And I feel like it's been really valuable.
So Calico, I see that you put up good examples given as resources to follow and model after. Would you like to share a little bit more about that?
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
Yes.
So, for instance, if I'm asking them to give a case presentation using PowerPoint, then I would create one so that I can give them that example. Or sometimes it's as simple as setting up like a template for APA so that they understand this is kind of the layout.
Do you ever share student examples?
I have not yet.
Just to kind of piggyback on, I hope I'm saying your name right, Calico, I hope. I always worry about stuff like that, Calico, because, my first name's Rufina, and just real quick, the priest at my church some years ago called me Regina, and I go, no, that's not my name, Father. And so I'm always conscious of getting names right, but just to kind of piggyback on what you said is that I do provide samples for students. Here's an example of a rhetorical analysis as one that I've provided to students, because I myself am a visual teacher and learner. So when I ask students to create an outline, I show them what a final outline should look like.
Dennis,
Yes.
my
Yes.
point is sticking with students continuously. Like what I do in my classes, like, in my class, the number of students normally less, 5 to 7. That is why I can do that. I always stick with the student like continuously throughout the semester. If somebody fails, I call him to my office, and why he is doing bad, then we try to overcome that with time. So they are never lonely.
Peter, what about over in graduate area? What are y'all doing over there?
Wondering what we're doing. I'm helping with the Doctor of Nursing program. We're finishing that up.
What are y'all doing to support student success over there? What practices do y'all have in place, or?
Yeah, I'm mostly working with faculty. We have graduate faculty toolkit, and we go through, really great resources for active learning, for teaching and learning in all the different kinds of learning environments. Mainly this sort of upgrading and getting a better quality in the courses themselves. So I think a better course is going to lead to those things we want. Student success, retention, completion.
Rachel Zimmerman. What practices do you use?
Lots of things.
What's your favorite?
My favorite this semester is probably that I am telling students, please do not ask for extensions on things. You can always have as much time as you need. So if they need an extra day or 2 or 3 or 4, I don't care. Just, do it and get it done. And that's cut down on emails. I'm not getting as many emails, 30 students every week saying, I need another day. I am asking that if they need to submit things more than 2 weeks late, or they need to submit a lot of stuff late, that they need to talk to me ahead of time and we will arrange things. But please don't ask for extensions is something that I'm really enjoying this semester.
How are your students responding to that? Are you seeing more late work?
No, I'm seeing fewer emails. The reason why I'm doing this is 1, because fewer emails, and 2, because, and I've explained this to students why I have this policy. There's a lot of research showing that students with more privilege are more likely to ask for extensions, whereas first-generation students or students who aren't white or who otherwise are disadvantaged are less likely to ask for the extension, and they're instead going to turn something in that is subpar. So it works out for me and for students to have this policy where, if you need more time, just take more time.
What have y'all tried that kind of backfired? Have you ever tried something you're like, oh, I thought this would really help student success, but it totally didn't work the way I thought it would? No one's ever had anything backfire?
I have one. One of my first semesters teaching here, when we were in person, I gave students how to vote about what they wanted their midterm to look like, whether they wanted it to be like a test or like group presentations. I had a few other examples, and they all voted for the exam. I gave them all these like innovative things to try something different and new that was, out of their comfort zone, and they all chose the exam. Not all, but the majority voted for the exam. So now, instead of having like a majority vote, I let them pick what they want to do on their own, so that not everybody has to do the exam.
Well, I will sort of piggyback off of that. I think the times that I have given it up to a vote in my classes for anything, the outcome has not been good. Whether it was what Rachel shared or just that nobody votes, and it's like pulling teeth to get people to make a decision. And then they're like, well, just tell us what we have to do so we can schedule it into our calendar.
Yeah, I think for me, it was in the speech class that backfired when basically, especially like the persuasive speech, because it is a lot of the topics are controversial and, argument and that type of thing. And I said, okay, how about everybody just pick their own topic? And people were just picking very flowery, fuzzy topics. And I was really kind of disappointed. I thought people would pick more argumentative, controversial topics. And I felt it's like, okay, I let them choose, and most of them didn't even come close to what I thought they would pick.
So does it sound like they need guidance with choices, with making choices?
Yeah, I've kind of had that same thing happen. And so then what I went to is I just listed a bunch of topics that I felt like would be good topics, and then let them choose their top 3. And then that way I just made sure every student would get at least one that was in their top 3. And so they still got some choice, but then they had some guidance around, you know, what might be more appropriate topics. The other thing I wanted to bring up was kind of along that same lines is, you know, I have a lot of students that will complain. They'll say, oh, you just have us do a lot of busy work. Like we just want to test, or we just want this one big thing. But then when I would say like, okay, well, let's try that, then they would realize that those activities that we were either doing in class or out of class were actually leading them towards applying the content and being able to retain it. And then they realized, because I was like, well, if we don't have this activity, will you read the book? Would you even read the book? And so when we took it away, I'm like, how many of you honestly read the book? And like 2 people raised their hands because they didn't need to read the book because we didn't have any activity around them engaging with that material. So I think sometimes we have to be careful around just like letting the students run the curriculum, but actually let them be involved and have some involvement about, you know, so it can't be one way or the other. It shouldn't be all teacher led and it shouldn't be all student choice. It's got to be somewhere in between where there's, I think when there's engagement and some guidance around it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, this semester I'm doing something that I saw somebody else talk about online, where I'm having them do a reading reflection each week. It's a Google form that asks them a few questions about the reading, where they can say, what do you want us to talk about in class? And then I look at those before class and I you know, choose the artworks or topics that they had questions about in the reading reflection. So it encourages them to do the reading, but lets them have some input on what we talk about in class.
Yeah, I think it's like what Carol was saying. I think it's so important. You know, there's all the research here and there about students being self-guided and students do this but it's like what Carol said. I think we need that balance because they're college students, but they still need some direction. I think we can't just say, hey, okay, what do you guys want to do? You know, I think we have to give them some direction. And, you know, like, especially with the undergrads, because, you know, a lot of them are coming in right from high school and they're used to, you know, that just, you know, tell us what we do. I mean, there is some free thinking and some, you know, self-guidance, but I still think they need some direction.
Excuse me, I was just going to say that along the same lines that Carol was saying, we've used kind of guided reading. So within a discipline, you would say, here are 3 or 4 sources, which they may be peer-reviewed journals, that you can look at in the last, you know, however many years, and pick a topic of relevance to you. So you know they're going to be going to, you know, a good source, but you give them the liberty to pick an article or you know, a direction within that.
I have to say that I'm really interested in this idea of creating a syllabus that intrigues the students, you know, because I'm like, you know, I know that as faculty, we are so concerned with making sure that they meet the guidelines of what they have to have in them. I'm thinking to myself, how do we add something to the syllabus that the student is actually going to get excited about it? I can't fathom what that would be.
I love that, Shauna. It's like, get college students excited.
I'm just being real with all of you, because it's like,
yeah,
they don't, Yeah, I
You know,
haven't
and
met a
it's-
student yet.
the
that's like, oh
syllabus-
my gosh, I can't wait to read your syllabus.
The syllabus is getting to the point where it's longer than my dissertation was.
Well, and another thought I have with some
document?
of the, like the best practices that some of you are finding success with that were at the front of this document, you know, are many of those a result of, you know, what we've all been through with the COVID pandemic and what we're seeing in students? I know that in our department, we've talked a lot about how students are challenged with resiliency and getting themselves organized and turning things in. And so some of these things, are they a result of what we're seeing in students today, or is this something that you all have always done? Like Rachel, have you always had this flexible turn-in policy, or is it a result of kind of the need to put something like that in place because of what students are dealing with?
I mean, I was only teaching for 2 years before the pandemic started.
Oh.
So I was definitely headed in this direction, but yeah, the pandemic made me really have to relearn how to teach. And I very much delved into, you know, trauma-informed teaching and all these other things, and how trauma affects executive functioning, which is exactly what you're describing, that we can't remember policies, we can't remember to turn things in. So yeah, the pandemic definitely kind of supercharged this whole process for me.
Well, you know, Shauna, to kind of piggyback on Rich, I had been teaching online for about 15 years. So when the pandemic hit, it was like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. It wasn't a big trend. But Shauna, I'll tell you, I did make adjustments to doing more kind of the humanizing the online environment. I did increase more Zoom sessions, like what we're doing now. During that 2 years of pandemic, I had more Zoom sessions so that everything wasn't just 100% answer the discussion questions, post your video speech, and then everybody go on their way. I did more live stuff so that we had that connection.
Well, and I know something else that, like, in the years that I've been teaching, I was very rigid when I first started teaching with everything, with due dates and like my anxiousness getting into class, and, you know, making sure that my time was very, very, very productive. And, you know, now I do read the room better, if that makes sense. Like, and if we need to back off of a topic or something and slow it down and go back through it, or we need to break up into groups, I'm not as rigid as I used to be. And I don't know if that's just, you know, gaining experience with teaching, or if it's understanding that, you know, the students need a little bit more attention than they used to.
Has anyone else noticed shifts in their teaching practices from when they first began?
Yeah, I agree with Shauna. Like I used to do the same thing, very strict, like no extension. But nowadays it doesn't work anymore. Yes, maybe I came from like international, like outside this country. So in our country, everything is rigid. Even students cannot ask any question in the class. So I used to follow that past few weeks, and I got so many complaints, Yes.
I can't imagine. It's like, don't ask any questions.
Yes.
Just listen to me talk.
Then,
It's
like,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great example though of the differences in expectations based on different areas, different cultures. I think that's a really, really great example. And so I appreciate that. It's hard for me to call you Rashad, so I'm so used to calling you MD.
yes, yeah, no problem. Everything is fine.
Okay. And so, yeah, I love that you shared that, and then how you just adapted. I think that's really cool. And I think that's the really cool thing about teaching is that we're constantly learning ourselves and adapting depending on the situation, depending on the culture, depending on what's happening in our society. And I know that I've been teaching for 30 plus years, and things have changed so much in the last 30 years. And one of the things that I did when I first started too was not just being rigid, but I thought I had to teach them everything, right? I'm like, I gotta teach you all this stuff. And then I began to realize that, I began to realize that, they can come away with 10 or 15 really solid concepts that they can synergize and they can apply. Like that's one of the things I do for self-reflection is it's like this top 10. I do it in every class. Like, what are the top 10 things you learned in this course that you can really apply going forward? And how do they even work together? And how will they work for you in the future? And I think that that's good. So if I can go to a student and say like, hey, remember when you took, research and stats? Like, what do you remember from that class? And how have you used it since you took that class? Like, I feel like that's kind of a measure of success. Like if they go like, oh yeah, like I remember research design, and I remember, I remember this or that. And, I remember the difference between experimental and descriptive research, and this is how I've applied it. Though to me, then I feel like I've had some success. And then I also like to do a lot of self-reflection on myself. Just like, what am I learning? How am I growing? How am I listening? You have to have a lot of courage to be a teacher, because you're just like, man, you're just up there like trying to figure it out with the students, right? And so I applaud you for being flexible and listening and responding. I think it's amazing.
Yes, thank you. Our department at that time, Mike Minsick, he called me many times and gave me some lesson. And then I revised myself. In the next semester, in my second semester, I got the Student Choice Award. So like I completely broke myself and like rebuild myself. Yeah. So that I believe that not only teaching a student, we should learn also in every day. Yeah.
And I think what Carol says is a testament to learning outcomes. When you go back and say, hey, remember when we did XYZ? Oh yeah, remember, because we did this, and this. And it kind of puts that stamp of approval on those learning outcomes.
Well, and I think that sometimes what I'm noticing for sure this semester is in something that was said earlier about, having better lines of communication with our students and really listening to what they have to say and what's going on and all of that. And I've been working recently on trying to help the students with the panic factor when you say certain things in class, like take out a piece of paper, or we're going to take a quick little quiz to see where you're at. And they're all like, ugh. And I'm like, just calm down. It's just a check-in. Well, how much is it going to be worth? Is it going to count? Is it this? And I'm like, I don't know. Just take it out and let's have a conversation on paper.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Denise, for wrapping up your online group. Yvonne's going to go first with sharing.
Right.
Up.
Well, I don't know which member of our group wants to kind of get up and talk about that. We have great group members. So we have several people. So you want to come down? Do any of you want to get up and kind of talk about
this? this is gonna take time, so assign or get started talking, girlfriend.
Yeah, why don't you turn the camera towards the,
Bueno. Okay.
All right, we talked about pros and cons of grading. So it was a pretty good conversation. So some of the pros that people brought up was encouraging habits, staying on track, getting students to prepare and professionals, and essentially a lot of tracking of students, it seems, that you can use grading for. While a lot of the cons, a lot of manual entry of things, the tracking of things with grades can be quite tedious. Students have low substance contributions because they get graded on it, but they have to contribute anyway. Increase in stress, increase in cheating, too much organization, a lot of defining of policies and stuff like that. Grades are definitely not feedback, so it balances back to, okay, if you want to give feedback to students, don't do it through a grade. It penalizes students with varying life circumstances and encourages students to come to class sick, particularly if you grade like things like attendance and stuff. So pretty much the only students who actually benefit from grades are students who get A's. And other stereotypical like assumptions that you like to make about students, like they live on campus, have good immune systems, no other responsibilities. Those are the only students who get benefits. Everyone else does not get benefits from grades. So some of the things that we talked about, like, oh, what can you do to relax this, is use Blackboard to do some like advanced releasing and stuff, so you can keep track of some things. What I do is I split my assessments and other things into formative and summative categories. I only assign grades on the summative categories, depending on how you want to do that. So I use alternative grading myself. I use standards-based grading and specifications grading. Haven't had the chance to dip into ungrading yet. And so this gets into some philosophical things. Going back to like a lot of this stuff over here, like, oh, we want to encourage professionalism. We want students to be prepared. It goes back to the idea of what is the point of college? Which gets into a really deep question. It's like, oh, if we're assessing attendance and participation because we want people to show up to things, is that our job to keep track of? Or are we content knowledge specialists only? Because I'm a content knowledge specialist. I don't know what it means to go work like a 9-to-5 job. And we also talked about extensions versus late work. Like for instance, no late work. I'm sure if you went to your boss, it would be along the lines of, hey, can I get an extension on this? They'd be like, sure. You do it again, they'd be sure. And you do it a third time, be like, can we talk? Type of policies. And then the assigning of partial credit. Does someone have a partial understanding of something? I don't know what that means. So there's a lot of different things going on with grading.
All right, thank you very much. And very nicely written out. Good job, group. Yeah, I was gonna say, are we Christine, you had suggested them going first. Are we going next? Does it matter?
doesn't matter.
All right, so we didn't do a lot of writing. We did a lot of talking, and I'm gonna hand it over to, are you game?
Yeah.
Okay, Judy's gonna share with us.
Because I am not a perfectionist, and therefore this is practice, okay?
Yeah, so that was our topic, practice versus perfection.
Practice versus perfection. How can you get your, what is it?
How can you create spaces where students can play with ideas, feel safe to mess up, and work on a growth mindset?
So we immediately went up there and before Karen even got there, the three of us wrote down our answers.
They were on it.
So experiential education, hold on, ungrading, and what was the third one? Oh, repeat of giving feedback on papers and stuff and giving them back before any grading takes place, but feedback and how to sort of improve. So those were like the three items.
Also how to be perfectly imperfect.
Or as Alegria said, the perfect novice. You're the perfect novice. You made exactly the number of mistakes you should have made. We didn't say that, putting words into our mouth. But that idea that that mistake making is part of the process. For me, the ungrading has sort of been revolutionary. I don't grade my students anymore. They grade themselves and they work harder than they did when I was grading them. And I think they learn more than they did when I was grading.
So you had talked to one of your students a
Oh.
couple of days ago, we were talking about grades, and he said that, he's like, yeah, I just did this essay, and she's not gonna grade it, I'm gonna do a self-reflection, grade myself. And I was like, oh, what class is that? He's like, history. So I knew it was you. And I said, well, how'd you feel about that? He was like, I was so less stressed about all the work.
Because there's also students who are so more stressed because they have the obligation to identify work they need to do or grade whatever. But I think once they do it a few times, we sort of they get used to it and they're happy with it. But so it's not stress free for all of them.
You made one guy happy.
I made one guy happy. There you go. So,
And I like David's comment about, let's define what we mean by perfection, right? Sometimes it's bringing those expectations down of, you have visions of mastery that are really way beyond what's expected of this course and what we're looking to accomplish here, right? Yeah. And obviously with music and with language acquisition, there's a lot of practicing that's going in for those kinds of courses. So that's a brief synopsis for ours. Thank you, Judy.
In order to save time, what our discussion was about was validation and stereotypes for marginalized students. How do we help them feel comfortable in the classroom? And we came up with, without putting them into their stereotype. And we came up with so many great ideas. We had such a great discussion, but safety was really important, inviting participation, confidentiality, that what's said here in our discussion stays in our discussions, defining what that looks like, body languages, opinions, allowing imperfection came up in our group as well. Apologize and admit to being human and having empathy, being a role model for that. Giving students time to prepare before you ask them to participate, we thought was really important. Asking for open-mindedness, avoiding alienating the students, and then looking at our own biases and really digging into those, and then creating relationships with students.
Nice. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And our online folks, who do we have? Who's going to share out for?
We didn't even get there. We were talking.
Fantastic. I'm sure it was a good conversation. How are we gonna, who's gonna share?
Someone in the online group like to share out?
Just ask.
Oh, I didn't know. Oh, I thought Denise was going to, but she's not. But
you got it, Rufina.
I know. Trust me, I'm not shy. It's all good. I'm just looking at the notes that we have. So we talked about. We also had some great dialogue and discussion. Flexibility on attendance policies, late policies. Accommodations for illnesses, and I think just kind of throwing in the pandemic there over the last 2 years, I think as many of us mentioned, we've become more, that level of awareness has increased in terms of that. Then we talked about examples of resources, open-ended assignments, and I think Rachel shared with us, which is pretty awesome, about don't worry, just get it done. Don't worry about it being late. I mean, if it's going to be more than 2 weeks, then let's talk. But there wasn't this rigidness about this has to be in on this date, or it's a zero kind of philosophy. So there was a move away from that. And I mentioned, I've been teaching online for 15 years. So when the pandemic hit, it was not a big issue. But as I mentioned in our group, one thing I did do different during that 2.5 year time was to integrate more Zoom, humanizing the online environment, doing more face-to-face, as we, transition to the 100% online. And let's see, I don't know if you're able to scroll down a little. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so and then we talked about stop trying to cover everything. When many of us first started teaching, it was like, listen, we got to get this done. We got 20 pages of stuff. So don't ask me any questions.
Yep.
So there was a lot of that. But and then we also talked about the students need guidance. And there's all the research out today about students are self, promoting. They can go out and do it on their own. Not necessarily. They do need some balance and some guidance on what to do. So if you give them too much freedom, then I think it was Rachel that mentioned, then it's too much in decisions. And so that gives them a headache. So we had a great session, an awesome session. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafina.
One really quick thing.
Yeah,
about the
please.
Ungrading. And that is that I do it differently in my upper division class and my lower division class. My lower division class has does ungrading on assignments, and my upper division class does ungrading for the course. Just to sort of direct those lower division students. And I didn't do that the first time, and it works much better for the 100 level students to do it that way. To say what grade did you earn on this paper, which is worth 15% of your total grade, so that they can kind of have some direction about what I think are higher stakes assignments.
Thank you. So we're going to wrap up with a request for you to just quickly, if you have a piece of technology on you, fill out a feedback form, just a couple of questions. I believe that is bit.ly/ and is it capitalization sensitive?
No.
TY4FB. That is our link.
Thank you for feedback.
Oh, thank you for feedback. See that? Yes, that would be great. So we have next month, we're going to go delve into different types of grading strategies. So thank you for that final comment, Judy. That's exactly a great segue. Our next session is Thursday, October 6th. It'll be from 4 to 5 p.m. and it'll be right next door. We are so grateful for you coming out today. Yeah.
Minnesota, the Bitly takes you to some very strange sites.
You have to say caps matter.
Caps matter.
Okay, yeah.
It should take you to anonymous speech
D-Nice was not so nice in saying that.
I am not a Bitly pro. I'm sorry.
The Bitly part doesn't have to be capitalized, but the TY for
Yes.
that has to be done just like that.
Thank you, Carla.
Yeah.
And we will post on the CTLL website resources. We have a couple of resources from today. We've got a whole special issue. Do you want to make mention of that, Yvonne?
Sure. The special issue is a journal, and it talks about Laura Redmont's validation theory. And basically, her theory talks about how important it is to validate students with what they bring to the table. So a lot of times people operate on deficit models of
Yes.
education, like this person came from a lower income school or community or their first generation. And so these students are at a deficit. So that's the kind of mentality and approach. Whereas the validation theory says, let's focus on what these students are bringing with them. Talk about their resilience, talk about their ability to problem solve, talk about their ability to juggle multiple priorities, and think about how we can use those to help them be successful in the classroom, as opposed to focusing on what they might not know and what they might not have. So it's a great theory. It's been around since the 90s, and then the special issue goes through and talks about and uses case studies to show how it's been implemented in different types of areas and settings. But in terms of our students, it's a really great way to be thinking about approaching our students.
Thank you. And Christine, you had an article contemplative, I have a hard time saying that, pedagogy, it was a chapter. Do you want to just a quick blurb on, do you recall? It's a strengths-based approach as well, correct?
Correct, and moving away from the banking system of education, where we deliver content and making it much broader, where everyone brings something to the table. So they're great resources. Check them out.
Yep. And then I've got one also, grading for growth, using sliding scale rubrics to motivate struggling learners. So thinking about how do we help promote that growth mindset in our students and keep them coming back and trying harder and persisting, right? All right, so we've got feedback.
Where there's a question in the chat, can you talk about where they can access resources?
Yes, they are going to be posted. I don't know that they're there yet, Denise. They're going to be on our CTLL website, correct? And along with a recording of today's session is my understanding.
If you go to the CTL website, over here in archives, last year's page is what you'll come to because we haven't had any activities yet this year. So this will be pushed farther down and you'll see something very similar to this with this year's content. Session materials, video, slide decks.
So again, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Dean Stefan, for coming. It's really great to see you. I've got little snack baggies and we've got a lot of leftovers. So please make your way over to the grazing of the snacks before we head out today. Thank you again for coming.
One last thing, Denise and I are hosting a monthly reading group starting next Monday at 3. The first one is called Teach More by Grading Less or Differently by Shakespeare and Tanner. It's a great article about all of this, so it ties in directly with the stuff we're here. And the next one is in October. So next Monday at 3.
Where?
In front of Denise's office or Zoom. It'll show up in the digest.
Okay, cool. Next Monday.
Hey, Karen, can I make an announcement?
Yes.
So Max Mendiata is going to be doing meditation on Mondays at 1 p.m. and it's going to be in the
Language Center.
Language Center. So I hope everybody will attend. I've been going for the last couple semesters and it is really valuable.
Thank you, Carol.
Sure. And I'll be doing something also, and I'll send it out in the email digest. I'll be doing a somatic stress management. So it'll be movement, probably some yoga, some meditation, and it's just 30 minutes long. So I'll let you know when I'm going to be doing that during the week.
If you have any, Carol, if you have a flyer, I'm happy to post it up in our area too.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. We're gonna post these pictures too.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I really don't share this. Isn't it
Thank
great?
you, thank you.
Yeah.